I am Amy Hollywood. I teach here at the Harvard Divinity School and in the Committee on the Study of Religion, which is upstairs. People like to pretend it's not there. So I just thought I'd point it out. It's not just down the road there. I want to thank Christina for inviting me to open this reading today, and which I'm really excited about, and also on behalf of the Woodbury Poetry Room, did you already do this? To welcome everyone to the final reading of 2014, The Poet's Voice, with Dan Beachy-Quick, Fanny Howe, Peter O'Leary, and Patrick Pritchett. I guess you all know where you are, and it says it on a piece of paper, but okay. I'm going to say a few things about the way I think about the relationship between religion and poetry that I hope will provide an interesting backdrop against which to listen to the work of the poets brought together here. John Taggart wrote in The Spiritual Definition of Poetry, "The history of poetry in our century is only superficially the history of the struggle to make it new. More enduringly, it is the struggle to regain the definition of poetry as spiritual ascesis." I'm interested, and I think this reading was constituted out of a shared interest, in asking what it means to understand poetry as spiritual ascesis. What does it mean to read and write my words devoutly, religiously, mystically? The work of the four wonderful poets gathered here tonight raises these questions in particularly acute ways. I would venture to guess, and it's a guess, but sometimes I'm pretty sure I'm right, that for Fanny Howe, for Dan Beachy-Quick, Peter O'Leary, and Patrick Pritchett, writing is itself a kind of reading, and both writing and reading are inexhaustible attempts to hear God, or, absent God, to hear those others that we glimpse, hear traces of, just barely touch, in the acts of reading and writing themselves. For all of these poets, reading and writing are forms of divination. They may not hear God in the way Joan of Arc did, although with Fanny Howe, I'm not so sure. But their writing is, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to pick on you, but their writing is itself an inscription of the divine, however fragmentary and partial. For they are all deeply committed to the movement of thought, to the articulation of affect, and to an engagement with that aspect of existence irreducible to the individual, or to the group, or to the realm of natural rationalistic explanation, as people in my field would say. The late Reginald Shepard, in an anthology, Lyric Postmodernism, that is fragmentary but useful for the non-expert, notes that none of the techniques of the contemporary poetry he anthologizes, much of which is considered difficult, and I'm very interested in this concept of difficulty, are new. This is Shepard. Syntactical fracture or deformation, quotation, pastiche, collage, montage, cinematic jump cuts, polyvocality or multiplication of voices, irony, parody, the mingling of kinds of diction and discourse, intentional catachresis, incorporating the inappropriate, inviting error, associative rather than linear logic, seriality and juxtaposition instead of narrative or extended meditation, can all be found in the works of the high modernists. The difficulty of much contemporary American poetry, then, seems to mirror that of modernism and modernism's precursors. What is new, according to Shepard, and I'm not sure I agree with him, but what's new, according to Shepard, is that unlike high modernism, this contemporary poetry refuses the possibility of synthesis, of recreating a whole out of fragments. One of the things I'm interested in the work of the poets gathered today is the extent to which they think that's right, not just about high modernism, but right about their own work. Is it true that the modernists want to close the whole, put the fragments back together, or is it simply about the reception of them? Is it true that these poets want to leave the fragmentation open, leave everything bursting the seams, or is there an attempt to find a way to pull the fragments together in some of their work? I'd love to hear them speak about it, but we'll see whether we do a Q&A or not, it's still up in the air. I would add I would add to Reginald Shepard's point and my questions about it this, for me, vital point, that the difficulty of contemporary poetry, or the contemporary poetry that I like, which is always difficult in some way or another, does not call for expert deciphering, but instead solicits the reader to linger in the place of poetic inexplicability. Hence the ascesis, but also the ecstasy engendered through the reading, and I imagine, I hope, the writing of this work. So when I think about religion and contemporary poetry, I'm less interested in the exploration of religious themes or images, although they are strewn through the work of the poets gathered here tonight, than in the analogies and disanalogies between contemporary poetic practice and religious practices of writing and reading. The practices of religious elites, and increasingly not only elites, in Western Christianity circled endlessly around the Psalms, poems, with the reading, recitation, singing, and meditation of the Psalms leading to the production of ever new poems and songs in and through the engagement with the biblical text. We often forget how difficult the Psalms are, not just formally, which they are, but also in their vivid and complex imagery, the harshness of the world and the God they often depict, and in the truths that they purport to tell. For early theologians, theorists of the Psalms, literary critics all, and also many of them poets, the Psalms are at the heart of the Christian life because they contain the entire range of human emotion. And it is through uttering the words of the psalmist and looking from the book of Scripture to what the 12th century monk Bernard of Clairvaux calls the book of experience, moving back and forth between the two so that the words of the psalmist become one's own and emerge spontaneously from one's lips. It's then that we come to understand who we are, who God is, how we stand individually and communally before and in and with that God. The Psalms are not my scripture. The closest thing to a Bible I have is probably the collected works of Henry James. That's actually a true statement. But I strive to read religiously, perhaps even to write in that way. And that is what I see vividly, complexly, difficultly in the work of Beachy-Quick, Howe, O'Leary, and Pritchett. And a typical juxtaposition from Fanny Howe's "'Tis of Thee" 2003, chosen almost at random. Actually, it was an act of divination. I sat with piles of books by the four poets today on my desk and just kept opening them, and opened one of each, actually, and this is the one that spoke to the moment. X is an African-American man, Y, a European-American woman, Z, their grown son. X and Z. Any discussion about race is really a discussion about the creation of the universe. Page break, and then Y. Now, I believe that when the Messiah comes, the world will have no images, since the image will be cut free from the object, released like beef from a cow, and competition will automatically founder as an instinct, having no visible object in sight. Then on that day, I won't have to look for you in order to know you. I don't believe in the Messiah. I don't particularly want to be saved, but I believe in Fanny Howe. And I believe in Dan Beachy-Quick and Peter O'Leary, I did it, I knew I was going to do it once, and Patrick Pritchett, and many others, Susan Howe in the front row. What does that make me? So, to the readings. Do they have an order? Do they know what they're doing? Okay, alphabet. Dan Beachy-Quick. Okay, we'll go first.
Thanks, Amy. And thank you, Christina and Chloe and Mary. It's a real pleasure to be here reading with these poets. And I'm very glad to read first so I can sit down and not have nerves interrupting my hearing. Mostly I'm nervous now because I've never read in front of a fireplace into which my whole body could fit, but it's good to feel that kind of pressure. Yeah, that it seems animal too, that it has pause, gives me pause. I've been reading this collection of 2nd century early Christian writing known as the Apostolic Fathers. And there's one I've kind of fallen in a weird love with called The Shepherd of Hermas. And this poem emerges from that reading, Shepherd of. Invisible anchors of the bright, bright clouds and the bent over grasses with the unseen sails, the stones that endure without vision, and the swarms all mind, no mind, patient dance. None else can dance the commandments less than, more than real warnings of the double mind's deathly advice. An old woman with old hair sits in a chair offering vision, but then the chair wanders far away, and she's sitting alone in the air, braiding into plaits her hair. And the elm also bears fruit by bearing the fruitful vine, and the jar, half empty, worries the mind to vinegar from wine. Listen now and understand. These visions build a fence around the vineyard, so trespass becomes the holy guard, keeping none out, not child, not deer, not mouse. The shepherd makes such sanctuary in a fold. apophatic. Nothing changes, nothing grows wild, nothing grows lame, nothing bends weird the mind space into shape of tether and memory of ankle gone lame. The whole hurt song called irony cannot know how chaos aches beneath the facts it wears for a face, the fact of a blank page being a form of a map that is a kind of mask masking a mountain or a mouth or a marble pedestal from which the riddle pours down, and you know a man is the answer, a man, but nothing changes, nothing bends absence bright into a silence called paper white sun, circle or solar sail, or lonely wind across vast despair, or blank hope bearing small repair that this finger I point at myself answers the question, what is not is everywhere. Catullin. Some words, some arrows, and also wings pierce the heart to make it sing. Rug burns on knees and the back spasm, that crick in the neck from kneeling to pray with your mouth against the silent patch of nerves that delight in possessing silence as some form of light so sudden it blinds the mind that, thank you, gods, behind the eyes this light cannot think. I am the flowering weed grazed by every passing thing, and guess what? So are you. That's how the field gets scattered with repair. Longer and longer the shadows grow until each one is full grown and has a voice. Thank you, kid, for all this work, all this toil, all that plowing, all those songs, all the root work that keeps birds in the air where they belong. Don't call me kid. I'm no kid. You ghosts in the undergloom always get it wrong. I'm going to read a series of very short poems that I hope feel appropriate to the night. I'm in a kind of long study of literature written in ancient Greek, and was going back through Euripides and read a play I hadn't read before, The Phoenician Women, and had felt in some way very haunted by the moment where Antigone comes out and a messenger tells her about the insignias on the shields of the 7 heroes who died trying to destroy her home. And I thought a lot about shields and the relationship of the image as a thing that both was to protect the life behind it, but invited in the violence that threatened it. And I began to worry in some odd way, not simply about epic's relationship to glorifying a violence that seems to betray what humanity wants to think of itself, but of lyric's own relationship to such violence. And so I wrote a series of 7 shields, and I thought, but a shield doesn't get used without damage, and so I erased and left a remnant in it, other syllables, other words, and made a series of shards. And then I thought the last thing I wanted to do was write a series of poems that simply reflected the damage that could only be damage, and that a damage put against damage, done through damage, might rescue something. And so I took those shards and made stitches, and from those bare syllables that were left, I left them relict or remnant on the page and wrote songs around them, a kind of rescue or some form of repair that isn't in denial of the violence that birthed them, but contains it. So I'm going to read all of these. And just so you know, the first shield is related to then the first shard, which is the first stitch, which is the first song. I've never read them out loud, so I don't know how traceable it all is. If it's awful, don't tell me. Just look at me in a mean way. Shield. Be of ruin, this rude maker. Rubble be, ruin be not a stone. Hellstone, hailstone, hellebore. Take root in the broken and bloom blood into bitter lake, or let dirt drink its fill. The bee moans in its thin cup, pollen and trouble. Mark it in bronze, poet, grab the tool, beat it. Shield. Sword words clash in the memory cloud. Hectic bee amazed by the fragment field the mower left uncut. Shut it down, what only yields fragrant blades, lunatic seeds in downy shrouds. Lash deeds to shadows, use these cords. Shield. Deluges of Letha. Cannot shake at noon sleep from my eyes in eyes. See snake awake in the wet lock of grass. Grasp the thought by the tail and wait. Mistook a cloud for a woman. Weeps the same in mist, lost the same. Hand of no refuge. Shield. Omen, ailment, what the prayer moment intones, the God itch, and the electric fields when spring plugs yellow in and water sings. Bring the cup, bring the potsherd, read the broken name. The moon is an example of the shut door seeking a key. Wild sea, open. Shield. It has no mouth, no eyes. Father, it has no body. You tell me to make friends with it, but no one makes friends with the dark. Dark has hands, daughter. Slow they shut tight the sky black from blue. Study the night by sleeping it through. Go south into yourself. Take a breath. Repeat. Shield. You be awe. I'll be knife. There's an altar by the water. You be creature. I'll be priest. Slack sails, wait, wind. Wind waits feast. Least blood most blessed, you be what I lack. Ceased asking why, ceased open eyes. You altar in darkness alone. My girl of gold hair life, be antlers of deer, be your own rescue. Shield. No goat song, no satyr, no dancing cloven hoof, no stiff prick, no wine-drunk Silenus singing love sick, no cyclops, no shepherds, nothing but a stick. Wreck the bronze by beating it, throw a brick, throw spear, throw shit from stables, let worms gnaw all, go gather harm and bring a little home. Shard. Be, maker, be, stone, bore the broken blood, drink its moans, thin trouble, poet, tool. Shard. Woe, woe, the cloud be a field shut down. Why grant blade, see shroud, lash to a use. Shard. Oh, let not, oh, eyes see. The wet grass, wait. Took a cloud for me in mist, a refuge. Shard. Oh, what, pray, oh, O God. The elect sing the broken me. The moon is a hut or a sea. Shard. O mouth, O eyes, O body, you to make it dark, shut tight the lack. Study it through your breath, ray. Shard. Ah, water. You wait, wind, you ask why, you alter dark antlers of rescue. Shard. Song, no, 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 love, no, nothing but the brick. Throw it all, go home. Stitch. A tone, oh, moan, oh, poet. Stitch. Oh, loud bee, I own glades, ash, a use. Stitch. Oh, no. Oh, yes. We wait for refuge. Stitch. What God in the broke moon shut a sea. Stitch. Oh, yes, you make it lack breath. Stitch. We await you, you ark of rescue. Stitch. On love, no hinge, all home. Song. Sing gold this song. Sing gold this chain's scorched links. Balm the scathed ear's wounded tone by muting the dove's limited cry, who, into becoming so much less through the gray channel of her sunlit, sometimes radiant, purple-flecked throat. Beneath cloud, a flake of green also moans, makes moan. Other heroes also pull their prisons in chains behind, heroes other than doves, a kind of poet, a kind of storm cloud, a wound. Song. The wars are everywhere, oh, even within. Drawn in, poor bee, by the dance loud hum of some other tribe, poor bee. Even the center, even the heart, keeps a sting sharp. Art stings thought, thought stings art. Petty realm of the long known, are there other ways to learn to sing? Clash of long dead blades in the fallow fields, and the wind that blows truce for an hour whistles loud the rash martial tune. Some scribe handles himself, use it, sings the song. Song. Image of the Gorgon's eyes into bronze beaten, eyes no man can see. Image of Cyclops chanting yes as he hammers thunder into a bolt. Imagine the far west deeps where in ocean dragons roam. Image of the dragon's teeth in dry ground sown. Awful beauty of the shields. Cannot say wait, so mime the monster back to Fury's face forever, if forever could be real. Solace of eyes other eyes hide behind. Lightning's light, refuge of stone. Song. Closed circuit of the war chant. What? Words go on forever, even after the mouth singing them dies, like some god singing in the air, of clouds, of horses, of wild manes and fog, of tails tipped in mist, Before sleep, the child speaks. You can't bite rocks or you get broke teeth. You can't bite knives. The moon is too hard, sun too hot. The sky is a hut God built, that's all, floating above the sea. Song. Music spills out the unguarded mouth. Yes, yes, goes the song. The war dent you suffered, mind, make some heart beat it out. Even mine might do, to the very edge, to make the surface smooth. Like the ocean when it was new and the wind waited slack in a pale bag in the first dark before the sun knew it could rise. And then it rises. Then water gleams, a bright shield, breath breaks. Song. The sun god stood wet in the rain. Modesty. Myth. The missing arm points at the truth or plucks a string and waits for the tune. The broken penis bends down. You know so much more than you've lived. That's how it feels. You prepare remarks, a kind of proof, mostly benign. Almost no place sees you. Broke the nose off, dumb form of rescue. Song. To put the moon back in a song, to put back the sun and the stars, to loosen a little the air from the ether, to let the grass keep in thin shadow secret its secret love, to keep the roots dark. Nothing hasn't had enough of fear, wants fear a little more wild. To the deaf ear and the wheat ear that cannot not hear the covering, Paul, cover up the moon. Find some song, like a coin lost in the grass, and give it a home. Thanks.
I was going to sit down my preferred way, but I won't. Thank you to all of you for being here on this wet night. And to Christina, thank you for arranging this. It was originally, the idea was to talk about Gnosticism and how it haunts the current world without the current world knowing it's being haunted by it. But in the 70s, I developed an obsession with the Gnostics after reading The Gnostic Religion by Hans Jonas. And I went to Claremont College in California to look at the Nag Hammadi texts as they had preserved them there, like insect specimens drummed into stone. It was an unsettling period of engagement with something that was so familiar and so close to science fiction. Like the question Dante asked Virgil at the center of the earth, where Satan was drilled down like a screw. Why is this monster fixed upside down, he asked, and how has the sun moved from evening to dawn in so short a time? I was horrified by the mirroring of Gnosticism with the world as I saw it and in my religious thinking. Dread, as Jonas wrote, is the soul's response to its being in the world, alien, without companionship, in the dark vastness of the universe. The poems I've chosen, I'm just going to read a small set of poems from my book, Gone, which has gone. So this is a kind of resurrection moment. And this little set is in the middle, and it's called The Descent. And it has a kind of infusion of that dread that I had. The Descent. The descent has deepened, the interior lengthened. Designated ending. Blind, pulled down inside and then shot up again. To see east via the plate glass, a moon, a monsoon, an ashram. I used time almost wantonly in that bald but sensual sky to give me gusts and more measurement, not to snap the stars shut. But Joseph said, "You really ought to tender how you sail by eye. Your soul is just a length of baby." Someday a sheep with green eyes will meet me at a door. Self, come in and be as vigilant as the alien you are. I will enter with a book in my hand, I'm sure. In secret space-time, the heart is a conductor who measures the length of a spirit's ride. Heart, come along and be as heartless as you know you are. Red comrades inoperably close. I will follow with a book in my hand, I'm sure. There is a jail inside of me. It's a holy space, glove-filled for the individual baby, a soul rewarded and destroyed. Here, like a frost of liquid nitrogen, the rain slides over the wires in a thin water cover, one more fitting, paler for the real prisoners. And this I wrote, I was at a monastery. Let it snow. Let it snow unless it's in heaven. Let it know what it is itself, that water stuff, as it covers the silver winter dinner bell. No light I can't, but let me write of my dimensional other, mind ulterior to the crux of this huddle, while sheeted pilgrims on autopsy tables show a way to win under covers of night mist and apple. No holy talk confused them. They just needed a place to sleep with this possible grain of light buried deep, frozen to wet. Or else was the thing to hang self in cell, partially dying like rain to mist, to graphic gray's growth of mists. Is knowing the same as owning? Do I already have it? A spiral thumbprint, taped responses to each event. I thought I was a 5-part someone who had to decipher the air in things before navigating them, and each era was necessary. The children turned back to me from eternity, uncertainly, notes a bird chipped off, natality repeating its stock. They were nearly human, and I was happy to see a mouth in a face, not coldly attentive, saying, I think, but beings poured back onto Baggage Street, each against the wall, dreamily eating. Again, when training to die with your back to the train, you cry, green, green, to a blind metropolitan. It means you can't and you can. Then leap on the lap of the tall, blind man who asks you to repeat the word again, though now you're so beat you can't open your eyes to speak. Or are you just unmanifest? Never is going to be soon enough for me to say goodbye. So don't touch me. Who touched me? Sorry, but my head would rather leave 1,000 thoughts unsaid than as air they would chill in sunshine unpleasing. Unday. From nowhere, not near the sea, on blue field flats, the cemetery's absolutely solitary, you and 1/3 of a pound of bread for supper in the refectory, where I would die of hunger, if soon, if on this unday, one undoing would be undone. And this is the last one. The source. The source I thought was Arctic, the good platonic. Up the pole with soaked film and electric elevation onto a fishy platform, and waves on two sides, greenly welcoming. The sun water poured on holy atheism. It was light that powered out my ego or my heart before ending with a letter. Thank you.
That's not so easy to follow, but I'm going to try, both Dan and Fanny. I feel privileged to be here. I have some thoughts about Gnosticism, which I feel the allure. It draws me. It has a gravitational pull. But I'm troubled by it for reasons that I hope I can illustrate here. And I wanted to start with a quotation from a book by Jeffrey Kripal called The Serpent's Gift. It's subtitled Gnostic Reflections on the Study of Religion. This is from really early in the book. He writes, Gilles Quispel, the Dutch historian of Gnosticism and friend of C.G. Jung, once noted that there are three major strands of Western culture: faith, a way of knowing the world and oneself via religious doctrines, themselves dependent upon divine revelation and authoritative creeds of the religious communities; reason, a form of knowing deriving, at least in the West, from Greek philosophy and logic that relies on analytic and linear thought, empirical sense data, and doubt to arrive at the objective truth of things. It is this form of knowledge, of course, that culminated in the scientific method. That's Kripal's parenthetical. And finally, gnosis, a form of intuitive, visionary, or mystical self-knowledge that privileges primacy of personal experience and the depths of the self over the claims of both faith and reason, traditionally in order to acquire some form of liberation or salvation from a world seen as corrupt or fallen. So in Kripal's understanding, this gnosis invariably streams into esotericism, which is to say the currents or channels of hidden initiatic knowledge. So here's another quotation from Antoine Fèvre. He's a historian of esotericism. He writes, Gnosis is a sacred, saving philosophy, soteriological because it affects the inner transformation of man. And through discursive thought, but according to Henry Corbin, through a narrative revelation of hidden things, a saving light that itself brings life and joy, a divine grace that operates and assures salvation. I really like that quotation, particularly a narrative revelation of hidden things. And this, I'm glad that Fanny invoked Dante, because this leads me to think about this scene in the third canto of the Inferno, which is when Virgil leads Dante into hell. And at that moment, in Longfellow's translation, Dante writes, "He led me in among the secret things." He led me in among the secret things. And this is, for me, Dante's essential esotericism, which is experiential, it's downgoing, it's revelatory. And Dante is alluding at this moment to 4 lines from Virgil's Aeneid from Book 6, which is the book in which Aeneas makes his own journey to the underworld. And tradition held that Virgil himself had made the same journey, which is why he was able to portray it so accurately in the poem. And that's what authorized him to serve as Dante's guide into hell and then through almost all of purgatory. So here's my version of those 4 lines from Virgil. I have more than 4 lines. I'm not as precise as Virgil. Lords, you ruling the disturbingly animated depths, and you shades in the zero's oracle, you chaos and you phlegeton, ruling night's unechoing hollows, and you spirit forces in the void cone of sleep. Let me say the things I've heard, what the massive sulking earth makes darkness from, what numinous abyss it hides, what secrets buried unfold there, what's worth telling. It's this sort of authorization of revealing secret things. So I love secret things. I love the relationship between revelation and secret things. And Gnosticism, this joy that Antoine Fevre refers to in relation to the narrative revelation of hidden things. I believe in that. But I'm troubled by Gnosticism's anxiety with the body. It troubles me enough that I feel I have to bear witness to an incarnational Gnosticism. That's what I want. I want to exist. So a couple of years ago, Patrick with the noisy camera, he invited me to participate in a panel on the so-called New Gnosticism, the ominously named New Gnosticism. And as people were being invited to this, there was emails that were being shuttled back and forth. And I think Patrick said, somebody's got to write a manifesto. And then I was working that day, and when I came in, I looked at all the email, I saw at the end of it, yeah, O'Leary, you should write it. So I did, and I want to read to you the first tenet of the 7 tenets of the New Gnosticism, which gets to the heart of my incarnational anxiety. I say, the New Gnosticism is incarnational, whose body is hidden knowledge. The New Gnosticism, like all the old Gnosticisms, avails hidden instructions of deep revelatory insight. These teachings are worked like a mint into a code, a mother lode of knowledge detonated into matter, a gold dust, fertile as pollen and as collectible, by those assiduously driven to do so. This body of knowledge anatomizes divine realities, hierophanizes divinity itself. As the universe externalizes this knowledge, bodying it forth, the body occultates it in crypto-emotional veils, where it must be quarried through a form of mindfulness, an admixing of memory and desire. In this sense, the divine life and the divine revelation are manifested through the human form. Anthropos, taught Valentinus, is the underlying nature of that collective entity, the archetype or spiritual essence of human being. Religious and poetic language in these terms is a language of internal transformation written out on the skin of the cosmos itself. There's a little quotation from the Gospel of Thomas. Jesus said, "Let one who seeks not stop seeking until one finds. When one finds, one will be troubled. When one is troubled, one will marvel and will rule over all." All right, so I want to give you an example of what I hope is a kind of incarnational Gnosticism from my own work. I'm going to read a section from Phosphorescence of Thought, which is a book-length poem, the length of Whitman's Song of Myself, the most incarnational poem I think that exists. Maybe that's it. That's what we have. And in the midst of this poem, I felt that I needed to have a hymn to creation. And the model that I used for it was this medieval Latin hymn, the Benedicite, which is a hymn in which all of the elements, all of the things in the created world are compelled to praise God. So it's a hymn in the imperative, but the thing that's being impelled is everything in creation to sing out in praise of the divine. So this is the hymn of creation. I probably will stop every now and then to illuminate something if it seems worthwhile. And it involves crucial repetition of the phrase "make holy," which is essentially my version of the imperative of the Benedicite, and then repetitions of the phrase "you," because these are the things being implicated in this command, and then some repetitions of the preposition "by" to sort of signal how you might activate that. So this is the Benedicite. Make holy all you works of God with praise and exaltation, you angels of God and you heavens, you magnifiers of all the single quantum's original energy, you hydrogen and helium, you universe of frenzied particles billowing out, you primordial billion years depthless night shuddered toward transfiguration through, you praise, you magnification, you unbearable creative moment, you consuming sacrificial force. Make holy, you galactic internal dynamics, you spew of stars, you luminous intensities, you waters coursing over heaven, and you dynamos generating their power. You slow burning yellow star, you socket of life, you sun and moon, you same-sized Argentine luminaries drifting in the skies. That's a little reference to the completely happenstantial reality that the sun and the moon, as we see them, are exactly the same size. Imagine if we were on Mars, or if our moon was smaller than the sun and it couldn't blot it out. Our whole consciousness would be completely different. I submit to you. You same-sized Argentine luminaries drifting in the skies. You fungal spores into the sinuses huffed. You wicked lunar eclipse, you dais of cooling light years. Make holy this song by blessing, by building up with praises, you telescope of time, you notion of creation, you most antique ledge of energy it peers toward, you aeonic disdain, you horror Taurus, you flowing forms, you atmospheric womb, you cellular chemistries, you earthly life, you showers and dew, you souls, you tenderly dusted, glimmering mineral energy wound, you little animations of things, you prokaryotic cells, you knitters together, you fashioners of life. Make holy this song by filling your chemical bellies with food from the sun, by binding packets of bright particles sped down to the brooding earth with data of the life mass. And make holy, you fires, you heat, you winters, you hot summers, you dews and dendritic frosts, you icy rhymes and you polar colds, and you praisers and exalters, you oxygen saturating Earth's system, you environmental instability, you cosmic burning aspect, you fire starters, you setters ablaze of things, you oxygen devouring eukaryotic cells, you sweet fuckers, you meiotic, gametic, procreant urge, you involuntary erections, and you sexual daytime, you avid winter ice and you fluffy winter snows, you days and nights passing through them, you light, you gloomy darkness, you bottom down sadness, sadder still, you exfulgurations and you clouds, you rapid hapless scattering of electricity. Make holy this song, you multicellular forms, you bodies, you polyps, you worms, you insects, you clams, you sponges, You spiders, you leeches, you backbones, you life forms surging, metabolizing, expiring, you corpses, you spent energy, you unspooling tendrils of mushroom protein, you anuses extruding that vitalizing hash, you necrophagous moonlight fruits. Those are mushrooms. Necrophagous moonlight fruits. Without mushrooms, it would break down. The earth would become inert. You know, they found mushrooms in Antarctica. They found funguses growing on Perry's wooden hut that was left there. I mean, it's just phenomenal. Necrophagous moonlight fruits. It's kind of H.P. Lovecraft, which is sort of it's kind of Gnostic. Sorry. Okay, so there's the moonlight fruits. You got that. You eaters of your own dead, and you living things, you caloric scavengers and you sex scroungers. Make holy this song, you fountains gushing up and you seas and flumes, you rivers flowing, you sad sewage foaming and you amylaceous waters curdling, you tannic yeasty odor, and you passerines migrating through the leaves oxygenating the reek, you hydrodynamic pluvious des plaines. That's a river on the outskirts of Chicago that's where I do all of my bird watching. You lather at the Turban Falls, you guggled, twitching, spent alongside. Make holy this song, you mammals, you new emotional sensations, you intoxicated central nervous system, you flowers displaying, and you pollinators, you songbirds in sexual colors, and you flesh of fruit, and you, mother and baby, sensing the quality of these things and remembering it. You elephantine massive whales, and whatever in the waters moveth, you birds of the sky threading the air with flight, you invocation of flying, you lumbering beasts of the land, you cattle sweet as grass, and you handsome cougar slain in the neighborhood, which was something that happened about 5-6 years ago in Chicago. A cougar made its way from South Dakota into this fairly populated neighborhood, Roscoe Village, and people started to call the police, of course, because El Chupacabra seemed to be leaping from the alleys onto the roofs of people's garages. And of course, Chicago's finest, not in the fittest shape, decided the best way to take care of this cougar was to kill it. And there were pictures in the newspaper the next day, and it was this truly beautiful animal. It was like 190 pounds. It was a young male that had roved all the way from South Dakota. It was really just spectacular. Handsome cougar slain in the neighborhood. And you little house cat sphinxes perplexing the sun. You peoples, you daughters and you sons, make holy this song. You quadrupedal hand freed from the task of walking. You eye seeing it flex. You sweet liquor of light and rain falling down. You mind imagining this. You sweet interiors, by magnifying the moment, by corroding the pathways that internal vision followed, by decaying the mind toward morbid prescience's imagination fecundates. Make holy this song, you trillions of neurons keeping the creature, you stellar vistas of cells, you epiphenomenal loop, you initial leap from action to reflection, from pathway to memory, you self-thought, you slot of distinction, you crashed acid and phosphorescent flare, you infancy, you chance to learn, you curious sexual forms, you phallic thumb of love, and you thruster holding me tight. Those are both Whitman. You pressure in the uterine clutch, you glare of the rich palpation, you proposition of sperm, you orchid boat, and you winged serpent. Those come from Kenneth Rexroth. You sweet sleepiness, you relaxed body, you nations of the world, you language coming in, and you priests serving God, you spirits, you souls, you depths, you justice, you holiness, you humble heart. Make this song holy. You eccentrations of life, you lutrescent syrup in the veins, you autochthonous animal forms, sifting pneumatic imaginal shape, by numerously erupting with fire, by impulsively giving birth, by catastrophically sanctifying the metaphors, by interpenetrating the coital cluster, by singing out love's ancient evidence, by haplessly magnifying the glassy, melancholic interiors, by warding us with charms, by stitching us alphabetic talismans from strands of DNA, by forming tissue from moon spores and rubber, by leading us on, by thinking, by praising and exalting the Lord forever. If you abolish the symbols, then you tear down the walls of your own house. You should unfold the core of the symbols. We are the questions. So praise. Ananias, Azarias, Misael, bless the Lord. Praise and exalt him forever. Thank you very much.
Dear God, I have to follow these people. I taught here. I had the privilege of teaching here for 8 years in the history and literature program. And so I associate this room with dull, bureaucratic banality, where every week we met and discussed department business, and I tried not to nod off. So it's great to be here and redeem this mausoleum of Harvardiana with some fucking poetry. Peter, that was great. Fanny, Dan, Christina, thank you. Amy, it was awesome. I'm going to dip my oar in the water, the Gnostic depths too, and read this introduction to the new Gnostic panel that Peter alluded to, and which in fact I didn't actually deliver at the conference because I was too chicken shit, because Barrett Watton was glaring at me, and he always puts the wind up me. So you can read about all that. It's all on the internet. So just Google it or something. Actually, all the papers that were delivered at the new Gnostic panel at Louisville in 2012 are available to be read at talisman.org, I think it is, Ed Foster's website. So there's essays by Peter, myself, Mark Scroggins, and Norman Finkelstein, many other people. So here's my 2 cents. And it's it's not as inspirational as Peter, it's a little more academic, but why Gnosticism? Why now? One of the most difficult things in writing about the reemergence of a Gnostic poetics is having to continually backspace to override MS Word's autocorrect function, which capitalizes Gnostic. I call it the small g problem, since the new Gnostic poetics I'm trying to describe has something to do with dethroning the tyranny of the majuscule. That process entails some deliberate misprision or reframing of the term for this historical moment, because Gnostic has become such an elastic term, used to describe such a wide swath of writers, often as different from one another as, say, Poe and Emerson, that it threatens to lose its usefulness as a meaningful category. Though Gnosticism's heretical beliefs about an alien God and the struggle to attain spiritual knowledge was quashed by the 3rd century CE, its perturbing legacy continues to speak to a profound yearning for alternate modes of poetic epistemology, which neither the pieties of Iowa subjectivism nor the Marxist heterodoxies of the grand piano can answer to. You know who you are. It has influenced it has influenced modern writers and thinkers from Carl Jung to H.P. Lovecraft. For Harold Bloom, modernist Gnosis includes writers as diverse as Kafka and Hart Crane, while Hans Jonas finds strong affinities between Gnostic thought and Heidegger's existential phenomenology. Gnosis, as religious scholar Elaine Pagels observes, is not primarily rational knowledge. We could translate it as insight, for Gnosis involves an intuitive process of knowing oneself. This trend toward a contemporary Gnostic poetics owes its origins to several distinct vectors: the dethronement of theology and its reconstitution through a poetics of dispersal and the trace, the linguistic turn and its emphasis on the materiality of language, and the continuing commitment of poets aligned with the tradition of high modernism and the new American poetry to an avant-garde aesthetic. The idea of gnosis persists because it offers a powerful tool for counteracting the disenchantment and alienation of the world. It is a response to a specific historical moment that is less about reviving the tenets of an ancient and problematic heresy than about using the tropological resources of that heresy to produce a modernist Gnostic horizon. What stability the term retains, however wobbly, is sufficient to engage with a postmodern poetry that contains both avant-garde and spiritual commitments. The idea of a new Gnostic poetics derives in part from the recognition that modernism was always deeply invested and reliant on heterodox spiritual systems. And I'm thinking here, just Yeats, Pound, and H.D. at the very least, which have been consciously carried forward by postmodern poets like Duncan and Nathaniel Mackey, and in part on the idea of a post-secular religious turn, or the return of the theological repressed. It subscribes not only to the idea that, in Marjorie Perloff's words, language has become the new spiritus mundi, a phrase I'm not sure she offered in complete sincerity, but I'm going to grab onto it anyway, but to the continuity of a strong visionary mode in American poetry forwarded by Peter O'Leary in his recent essay, Apocalypsis. That's hard to say. Thank you. A way forward for poetry, and I quote, "Apocalypse and other forms of sacred expression unbind love from material desire, freeing it to embrace the unknown and the unspeakable. Apocalyptic poetry, then, is language charged with a charismatic power to reveal sacred reality in history and beyond it. The new Gnostic poetics does not entail a wholesale rejection of the body and the material world as the ancient Gnostics did, but instead delves more deeply into the spiritual potential of the immanent. The new Gnostic poetics is not a system then, much less a revival, but rather designates a group of fellow travelers committed to a poetic agon in which the articulation of spiritual values is integral to redeeming the ruins of history and the disjointedness of everyday life through a visionary experimental poetry." And that sounds like a grandly ambitious plan. You know, you got to swing for the fences. You know, this is not New York school irony, people. Sorry. Not that I don't like that, but you know. So I'm going to read from Song X, published by Talisman, and hopefully these poems will somehow attest to what I've just talked about here. Reside. Instead of disaster, this motion across a page, a sign of breathing in which everything becomes possible. I mean the words, the stand of them. As a swan and the rookeries of ice evolves a science of liftoff, not the name circling its own cleft dimension, but what issues, what resides, the beauty of the novices outgathering sugar for the fire of their lives. And this is, that was from my first chapbook, my first publication, Reside. This is from, I wrote a book on Joan of Arc called Burn, Doxology for Joan of Arc, which has a weirdly complicated history. It started in Hollywood, actually. Seriously, I was working in Hollywood for Catherine Bigelow, and we developed a picture about Joan of Arc that was supposed to star Sinead O'Connor, and it never got off the ground, but I did get stoned with Sinead O'Connor, which was awesome. And you know, I started writing these poems on this was all on Jim Cameron's watch. So he kind of, you know, supplemented this book. Prelude. It is by a passage of heat she makes the entrance from one body to another. A presage, then a long coat of heat, worn so that the body's uncertain arithmetic disappears into its folds, providing a kind of sublunary light, a replenishment beneath the uneven pressures of the half-white moon. The body is Aleph, Omega burns in the space where angels paint their halos. Painful has tattoos. A halo is a warble of the body, an exhalation of heated particles, an instruction to the light adorning the inner walls of cells. The trailing edge of the body leads to the touch of fire. Who dreams of fire, dreams the imperishable body. In the colony of the body, an hour of hair, lit by the sun, is a fountain pouring, a river knitting, the weave of first this text, then that. Read it in the spiral glyphs of a spent match. Unseal the book, sink the raft. Hello, Karen. I'm glad you made it. This is The Master of Fire, and this poem is dedicated to, Lisa Jarneau, with an obvious debt to Duncan. The Master of Fire, he spoke to me, he said, the wheel and what it moves grow old inside the flame. He said, what is essential to the heart is heat. And she motioned with her hand to follow her into the canyon of trees. They were all aflame, no burning there, but the clear light of oxygen devouring the lungs. A river giving off smoke. It was sweet. The master of tongues moved the shadows of flames. She was battlement and escutcheon. The myriad grooves of war worshipped in her wake. Mistress, I said, men are slow to move. By what agency may I touch them? He spoke, he said, cutting me. In no way does a rose issue, but by the water at its feet, and from the tongues of tiny flame, and out of the abandon of the west, and the names of the invisible that are written where only the dead may read them. And she showed me the graves of the angels that are spinning motes of ice around a ruby sun. To sleep, she said, is to make a bargain with the dust, and the catastrophe of living is boon to man. She said, the supernatural, a means for constructing realism. The master of my voice entered the tree of my thought as a bird all on fire, but the fire was blue and slowly turning in the night. It spoke to the stream. It said that boundaries exist, that edges occur. Is it overcoming and a sorrow? Movement decrees loss. An edge is to approach. The temple was hallowed by a series of desecrations. An object is an object when the eye refuses the other. To hold a face is to regard. And this is also from Byrne. Of the thought that is Perusia. What song of the Lord pursues? What song, what moan of the earth moves to a day? A day is supine, it lies before sun. What sun is this? My love by window is a movement of water, under light, and what light to speak? Or am I moving under sign of wood to speak? It is love this morning, to the purse of gold. And for a song the Lord will be or is bright now, to make of it a gift, make of the sun caress or owe, we shadow home. So moving forward here, I'm going to read some poems from Gnostic Frequencies, which was reviewed very generously by Don Wellman. Actually, this isn't in Gnostic Frequencies, but I forget what this is from. A chapbook called Lives of the Poets, I think. Kerygma. This is for Anne Waldman, who sings beyond the genius, I mean the body, its voice ghosting movements of a larger shore, wave, lap, dissolve, roar. Who said the prayer is nothing but words, assuming the shape of smoke. The work of fire, like the work of night, where the saying of the sacred is a message about the impossible. Push of the dream, where what gets said is always the longing to say more. And this poem, I'm going to read this for you, Peter, because we were discussing this the other day on email. Exact presence, and this is the first line is after Yves Bonnefoy. So this is basically my my methodology. Yves Bonnefoy meets William Gibson. So because as I tell my students in my science fiction class, this is science fiction is the place where theology is retreated or is resurrecting itself. It's the place of a kind of secular theology, the only place where the scandalous notion of the sublime can still speak itself freely in this secular age. Exact presence whom no flame can ever again hold back. I turn anew as Thoth turns, communicating what I cannot as yet see, its governing wavelengths broadcast on the narrowest of bands, its archangelic photons emanating the discharge of hyperousia, which is itself a black body form of radiation, hovering much as a ship hovers suspended above a crystal of pure water. About you, there is nothing at all exact, because form grows forever, multiple shadows out of its shifting presence. They bewilder us. We are aghast, shivering in the daydream between arches where the cold run of accession trembles in the zero of its own regard, striking signals, silence, the greater word of that mission to ignite the parables of green earth inside Mysterium Tremendum. Data cluster, net weave, neural fire bearer, crow has dawn, sips migrant toxins for the sundering of a fever in the body of delirium, its wreckage named I burn over midnight, and marked by whose hands? Instant of the supply, harrowing my sister, her wild stare to afternoon, another river, or is it the strange among us, inside us, chanting misery, pulchritude? Hosanna, flare dust in the afterglow, ship of all degrees, point of wheeling light, and a seizure of the left hand in its sensorium canopy, come as far as the sound of bees over a field of grass and snow, resolve in your finitude as the form of longing over many years, traversing arc of skull, vibratory prayer and threshold. I'll close with just two more poems because I know it's getting late. So this is a poem from Gnostic Frequencies, which the book is, well, it's a weird book, but it's the central section, or the middle section of the book, pays a lot of homages to poets who have written in the sort of the Hermetic tradition, the Hermetic line, going back. I forget where I start, probably with Blake, but it obviously runs, this stream runs through Yeats. So this is a poem. Some of the language is taken from Yeats's prose writings, from his essay or his weird piece on Michael Robartes. The Dream of Yeats. And the women who burned Shelley's body, did they burn the Book of Shadow and all its letters? Did they write their names as music sliding out of sleep and strewn with broken figures? Were their heads circled with light? Being dead, did they rise as swans and so create the final reach to translunar paradise? Because I speak, death joins joy to the intercourse of light. The soul in the evening walks beside my love. The soul is a song that forms the body with a look. Now an apple cups its poise of dew, and all the grass is gone to shivers. Death, ruin earth, then go past ruin. But an apple for my true love, who walks through evening, the green stain of its furnace. The soul is what they say cannot stop from singing. Grass, what goes through Avalon, ravenous, its cold green water running. And I'll close with this poem, Dante, or the End of Poetry, since we brought up Dante. This is pretty much a verbatim description of a conversation I had with Raul Zurita a couple years ago in the kitchen of my friend Anna Dini's, who's his primary translator into English. Dante, or the End of Poetry. And he stirred his coffee, the old poet, and spoke of Dante, and how Homer's journey to the underworld wove a thread through Virgil to the Selva Oscura, and that the Commedia was not the apex of Christianity, but its finale, that the enormous architecture of the poem was not built to house theology, but to protect man from the absence of God, who had already disappeared. He said the beauty of Dante was in the flow of the rhymes, so subtle you did not even notice them. They flow like the water of speech, and not even Spanish can capture them. The old poet spoke slowly, has a feeling the weight of each word, its monumental heft, its slippery lightness. And he talked of the work of poetry, of how to revive the flicker of logos, its small fire in a world where only a few fallen sparks persist. And he said, we are at the end of poetry because a word is no longer a word. An image is no longer an image, and this has killed God. He said, I have tried to write paradise. Thank you.